the October 12th, 2022 Transportation Commission meeting to order. And Jesse, if you'd read the instructions, please.
All right, welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jesse. Aiden, if you could call a roll, please.
Sure thing. So Charles Miazzi. I don't see yet. Barbara Harrington McKinney. I don't think he's here yet. Chris McCahill.
Here.
Ann Kovich.
Here.
Denise Jess said she'll be joining us in about an hour or so. Robbie Weber.
Here.
Trisha Bennett.
Here.
Bridget Brown.
Here.
Bill Bremer.
Here.
Harold Kleems.
Here.
And Darren Wozniewski.
Present.
Okay, thanks. It looks like we are missing both Alder Miazzi and Alder Harrington McKinney. So Harold and Darren, you would be able to vote until one or both of them joins at this point. Everybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting. Chris?
Move approval of the minutes.
There's a motion. Robbie, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote approving the minutes as presented. If anybody wishes to vote no or abstain, please raise their hand. Okay, seeing no hands, the motion is carried. Do we have any public comment under number 1 this evening?
We do not for number 1.
Okay. All right. I'll be sure and remember to ask about the other ones. Any disclosures or recusals this evening? Robbie.
Yes, on the item, I've forgotten which item it is, the one on the grant application. I just wanted to point out that I'm a member of the board of directors for Madison Bikes, and we wrote a letter of support for that.
Okay.
We're not benefiting directly.
So you're just disclosing. And Harold, would that be a similar comment for you since you signed the letter?
Same disclosure, indeed.
Okay. I noticed a letter from you in there. Thank you. So we'll disclose that for item number 6, the Safe Streets and Roads for All federal grant application. Darren. Oh, yes, Darren, you had a letter in there too.
My signature was on another letter from AARP.
Okay. All right. That's right. I saw one from you too. Okay. Any other disclosures or recusals? Okay. All right. So why don't we move on to item number 2? Before we ask for Justin to give just a very brief summary, do we have anybody registered to speak on that?
No, we do not.
Okay. Darren, did you have another comment or is your hand still up from the disclosure?
Sorry, still up from disclosure.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Justin, if you want to give us just a real brief couple minutes.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. So this is fairly straightforward. This is an on-call contract with a marketing firm intended to help us prepare materials for public outreach and information as we go into next spring's network redesign kind of public information push around how to use the new system, as well as the going through the BRT project. There will be lots of different things, materials we need to prepare, videos, flyers, graphics, all of those things to help inform the public about how the new system works and how to interact with it. And so this is just an on-call contract to help us prepare and create those materials.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Comments or questions for Justin? Okay, I'm seeing none. We would need a motion. Robbie?
Move approval.
Darren?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Harold, did you have a question?
Sorry, my hand raising and lowering seems to be very laggy, so I will try to lower it again. Maybe I'll quickly leave and reconnect, but no, I did not have anything else.
Okay, all right. So there's no further discussion? Just double checking? Okay, we will assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, so we will move on to item number 3. This is discussion and planning for the public hearing regarding the Metro Network redesign. And we have an outline of both the language assistance plan and the public participation plan. Before I ask staff to comment on both of those, briefly, do we have anybody who's registered to speak? If so, we'll wait till after staff makes the presentation and then hear from the public and then have questions. But I just wanted to check in, Aiden, to see if we have anybody registered to speak.
Yep, we currently have one person registered.
Okay. All right. So, Mick, are you going to handle this, or who's going to handle or Justin, who's going to handle the presentation part?
Mick, are you want to give that presentation?
Sure, I can run through it. Yep, no problem.
Go ahead, Mick.
Okay. For the public participation plan, we have a number of the materials that are outlined in the plan are all ready to go, and we should be ready to start putting those on buses starting tomorrow. Actually, they wanted to do it today, but we wanted to make sure that everything was approved. So everything will start appearing on buses tomorrow, including bus flyers, which also in the language assistance plan, we have bus flyers that are printed and will be on buses in Spanish, Hmong, and Chinese. So we've been working with civil rights to get that stuff translated ahead of time. So we're a little ahead of the game on some of these things. What's not listed in here is one additional item. We're going to do a flyer in maybe a week or two that's going to be a reminder of the public hearing. And we're going to remind them, we're going to offer assistance in registering for the hearing itself. And the assistance we'll offer is we'll tell them they can call the call center if they need help registering. They can email us and we can fill out the form for them. And we have a marketing cell phone here that will put out that line, and people can, they can call that line. We'll have one of our marketing staff be available to help people if they need assistance, just clicking on the meeting link that night. We'll also mention this second flyer, the encouraging engagement parties, and then we'll remind them of the language assistance, which is also in the language assistance plan, where we have been working with city IT and civil rights, where we're going to have we're going to have the hearing available on different audio channels where you can tune in to either in Spanish, English, Hmong, Chinese, and as far as I understand, we'll have a sign language interpreter also available. We're going to caption it live in English, and then we're going to record all the different language channels. And then after the fact, we'll have the meetings captioned in Hmong, Spanish, and Chinese that you will be able to have available on the website and all the other normal places. So we've got a lot of plans that we've been talking about to get a lot of good outreach and a lot of outreach for people in different languages as they might need it. So it's all outlined there. I'd be glad to answer any questions or give you any more information if you'd like.
Okay. Anybody from the Department of Civil Rights have anything to add with regard to the language access plan before we go to questions? Rebecca, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, we have the capacity to set up those languages, but until the date for the hearing is set, we're not able to book actual interpreters and captioners. So that would, be pending once we have the date set. So the services are planned but not confirmed is just what I wanted to add.
Sure. So hopefully under the next item, we'll take care of that.
And
okay.
Related to, I'm sorry, Anne,
sure.
I have one more comment.
Go ahead, Nick.
Working with Rebecca, we actually have been putting it in plain language too. So the Title VI report, where you have a summary that we'll have available in the next couple of days, and that we've tried to bring it down to plain language, take out all the jargon, and we've been working with Rebecca's going to take another pass at that for us, and then we'll have that interpreted for everybody. So we've been working on plain language as well.
Great. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I just had a question. So you mentioned Chinese, and I am just wondering how you determine which dialect. I guess I'm curious about how you determine that.
Rebecca, can you help me out with that, please?
Sure. So thank you for the question. There are different dialects of Chinese. I think the practice of the city, when they're not sure what the audience's particular dialect is to use traditional Chinese because it has similarities to multiple dialects. So the idea is to choose, when the audience is unknown, to choose the one that might have the broadest reach.
Okay.
Hey, other comments or questions? We've had a lot of discussion about this in the past, and I think Mick and Rebecca and others have done a good job of putting everything together into the plans. Justin, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that we do have the one public commenter. I'm not sure when that's.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Thank you. Why don't we go to that? Thanks for the reminder, Justin.
So we have Joe Frost of Whitehall Drive, Madison, Wisconsin. Neither supports nor opposes and wishes to speak.
Go ahead, Joe.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm Joe Frost. I serve on the city's Disability Rights Commission and wanted to share some personal input and some feedback. I've been hearing that, there are a number of folks that have brought up concerns to the Disability Rights Commission. Folks in my neighborhood as well have brought up concerns of the changes of routes, even like for the sake of argument. My wife and I now have to walk nearly a mile to catch the bus per the new plan. And so there's just been some concerns regarding the outreach and that, just to make sure that everybody impacted is reached, and assessing strategies to best identify those folks and identify how to get in touch with them. And though I like, hearing some of the notes of the flyers going out on the buses and some of the other avenues, I just wanted to share the concerns that have been brought to light of the struggles of gathering information and the concerns that folks have been sharing with me and with Alder Paulson, whom I've been in communication with regarding the changes. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing those concerns. We do have an item on our future agenda items to invite folks from the Disability Rights Commission to come talk to TC about racial equity and social justice related to transportation issues. So we look forward to having that additional conversation in the future. Do folks have comments or questions for Joe? Okay, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. So other comments or questions? We've been working on the agenda for the public hearing so that if we move forward under the next item, all of the things that Mick and Rebecca have talked about are available. We've been working to be ready to hopefully get that agenda actually published tomorrow. And, we would be able to move forward with all of these efforts and working with the alders, working with the NRTs, and all of the plans that we've been discussing at great length are summarized here to make hopefully great strides at soliciting feedback from the community so that we can get all of those thoughts as we look forward to making a decision on this important topic. Other comments or questions? Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, just in light of our public comment there, is staff confident that we've addressed his concerns as far as outreach that he's noted there? I'm just curious.
We're definitely going to do more things than we did the last time. One of the things that Rebecca and I have talked about is going out to laundromats and grocery stores to post these flyers and get them more out into the community. We're going to have some of our call center reps doing that starting next week. There is an email list to a number of agencies that Rebecca and I have been working on. We're going to send those out, and then we're going to contact a number of agencies ourselves and try to do mailers and email addresses and try to reach people that way. But I think one of the biggest things just getting out to the general public is besides the grocery stores and laundromats is we'll have a number of signs on bus stop poles as well. So we're shooting for 300 or so poles of really heavily used bus stops. So we're going to do a little bit more than we did the last time. The laundromat piece and the grocery store piece is something new for us. And we're open to suggestions if anyone else has any suggestions on where we should go.
Okay, is that all you had then, Darren?
That is, thank you.
Okay, Alder Miazzi, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, as an alder, is there any way we can come down and pick up some flyers ourselves to find avenues ourselves to disseminate this information?
Of course, I can get them ready for you. I was going to send an email to alders with links to everything so they could be printed themselves, but I'd be glad to print a bunch here and have them available to be handed out as well. No problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alder, do you think that it would be helpful for Mick to bring some printed ones down for all the alders?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that thought. Other comments or questions? Is that all you had, Alder?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Okay, other comments or questions? And if you happen to think of something, just go ahead and email Mick or Justin. And I mean, we've had lots of opportunities to talk about this and lots of opportunities for feedback already. So great job of summarizing all of this and incorporating all of the feedback that you've heard from people already. So much appreciated, and really, really good job, I think, in terms of trying to get out there. And, I'm personally really excited about the idea of the engagement parties, and hopefully that's going to take as well. Other comments or questions under item number 3? Okay, that was just review and feedback, so no motion or anything is required. So we will go ahead and move on to item number 4. This is the actual request to hold the public hearing for the adoption of the Metro Network redesign and acceptance of the related Title VI report on November 9th, 2022 at 6 o'clock. Public hearing will only include a staff presentation and public testimony. There will be no discussion, deliberation, or vote by the Transportation Commission on this item at the public hearing on November 9th. We're trying to be very clear about that. This item will be adjourned to the next Transportation Commission meeting for discussion, deliberation, and vote. So as we discuss this, and then it's listed, the Title VI report, the route names, spans, and headways / frequency, and bus stop locations and changes. So after we have the discussion, then do we have folks registered to speak on this item, Aiden?
We do not, no.
Okay. So as we discuss this and as we look to have a motion, we will be looking to have the request to hold the public hearing as described in that agenda item. So Justin, Mick, do you have any other comments about exactly what we'll be hearing, the timing of the information that we'll be getting? Because I know there's a lot of information that that will be available, and all of it may likely not be available tomorrow when we publish the agenda because we're publishing it so early.
Yeah, I can talk through that just in a bit more detail. Obviously the actual action for the public hearing is fairly self-explanatory there, and we've talked about that at length. But just to get into a little bit more of the weeds on the individual things that will eventually be voted upon. The Title VI report, this is, again, we've talked about this at length. It's the equity analysis that's required by our Federal Transit Administration. We'll do a presentation on the results of that analysis, and then also additional analysis that we did over and above what is required by Title VI, just for your reference. And then, as Mick mentioned, we'll have a summarized 2-pager roughly that distills that down into more plain language, because unfortunately the federal terms we have to use in our report make that report quite dense and unreadable. And then next we'll present an updated map of the service for you that is essentially unchanged from the plan version that was approved by Council in June. However, it will have some updated naming conventions and some various kind of minutia detail of turnarounds and things that just provide a little bit of additional context, and in some cases touch a few more spots, and just showing that in more detail. We'll have a table of each route and when the first pull out in the morning is and when the last pull in at night is. And really want your feedback on that in public comment around, if we say this route the first pull out's at 6:30, but somebody needs to get to the hospital at 6:15, that we know that and have you all vote to modify if appropriate, so that we can build that into our final schedules. Similarly for headways, showing, these routes operate at whatever designated frequency. And then we'll have a map or a series of maps of bus stop changes. Those will include removals of bus stops where service is no longer being provided in certain segments, and the addition of new stops in new segments, new corridors that are now being served that hadn't previously, or in some cases, their current street is currently being served in only one direction, and so we'll need to add bus stops on the other side of the street. And so you'll have a map of that information. This is not, we will need to come back in the spring with a bit more fine-grained details. What will be presented to you will have basically a dot at an intersection. And so we know we'll need to build a bus stop at that intersection, but we still have some engineering work to figure out, exactly whose property it will be in front of, and what the design of that bus stop will be. And so we'll have to come back to you with that more detailed information in the spring. Once we've kind of gotten the preliminary go ahead on the general intersection, we can start defining those details and bring it back to you. So that will be the package of information that we'll present to you. And then on November 9th, then we'll adjourn for the public hearing. And then we'll go to the public hearing, and then we'll adjourn until the November 30th meeting to further discuss and have you make any amendments that you would like to see to that package of materials. So,
can you comment on what, if we post the agenda tomorrow, can you comment on what information will be available tomorrow in Legistar when the agenda is posted, and when additional information will be available? Like if, weren't there like 3,000 comments or something, Mick, for the TPPB public hearing or something like that?
Yeah, there were a number of them. Justin and I talked about the materials that he just described. We hope to have those online starting at the beginning of next week. And then as far as the feedback collected, I can do a weekly report of all feedback collected, and I can send that to Aiden to distribute to everybody so that we can review it along the way, since we have a whole month, so that you don't have to read through all those comments right at the end. So we'll get that to you every week so that you have a time to see and just kind of digest what people are saying week to week, rather than just reading it all right at the beginning of November.
That would be great. So anything else from Justin or Mick before we go to comments or questions? Okay, comments or questions? Harold.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Thanks, Mick. One piece of information that I think for me would be helpful. You mentioned headways and anyway, I mentioned this a long time ago, but just providing ridership information for the past couple months, because I know things have picked up again, and also having a better understanding of ridership by time of day. I think that would be something useful for the commission to have when thinking about when should the first bus come, or where does it make sense to have what kind of headways. So if you could, and I don't think that needs to happen before the public hearing, but if that is something that you could provide, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. So I think this item is pretty straightforward. I just had a couple notes maybe for us all to consider as we move into this process. The first being, by my understanding, we will have a public hearing with just presentation and public comment, and we will not be discussing it at that time. So that's the same format we used at TPUB. As Alder Miyazi has pointed out, it got a little messy at times. So just make sure as we're going into that we're all reminded and clear that we won't be having discussion, so that we don't run into some of that mess again.
Yeah, I plan to do, Chris, is at the beginning of the public hearing, I plan to outline that. I'm still working out exactly how to handle this, but I thought that working with the city attorney's office, I'd draft an email or ask them to draft an email reminding alders that this is going to be no discussion at this meeting. So alders could register to speak if they wish to at the public hearing, which is a little different from, other BCC meetings, because alders are always able to speak. But here we're not having discussion. We're just getting public comment. So I want to make sure that it would be appropriately drafted. So I'd work with the city attorney's office. But my plan, Chris, would be at the beginning of the public hearing to remind everybody that this is what's going to happen tonight and what's not going to happen tonight. And then, but that's an excellent comment and a great reminder. So does that seem like a good way to handle it? Just have that at the very beginning, remind everybody what's going to happen?
I think so. And I don't think there's anything I can do to help, but let me know if there is reviewing anything. Sure. Yeah. The second note is kind of, so the content of this upcoming meeting is going to be very technical. Like as Justin mentioned, like the Title VI report's very technocratic. We're going to be talking about like a lot of minutia around stop location and stuff. But we're also doing this really concerted outreach push, which is great. But we're going to hear from a lot of folks who are seeing or speaking on this for the first time. And we heard from the registered speaker in the last item one of the concerns was I'm going to have to walk further to the bus stop, and I think we're going to hear a lot of that. So I guess my note is like, it would be helpful to consistently be clear that like those issues went through TPPB after lots of discussion, and so there are certain aspects of this that have been established through that process, and we're talking about sort of a different set of more detailed things at this time. And obviously, we can't control what people want to speak about, but I think if it's probably just helpful for staff to remind us and for you to remind us, and so we can just sort of wrap our head around how to take in what we're hearing at that hearing.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. We actually are even going to have a technology rehearsal just to make sure that everything goes well with regard to that. So I think what I hear you say, Chris, is in addition to just outlining the rules that everybody, that we're going to hear from staff with presentations, and we're going to hear from the general public that everybody has 5 minutes to speak, unless they need a translator or interpretation, and then they have 10 minutes, that staff should anticipate the concerns that we have heard already and try and address those in your presentation, which I think Justin and Mick, you all do that generally. But this is a very complicated issue. So the summary of how much outreach has been done, that would be very helpful. And, I think we'll probably need to hear that again when we actually have the discussion as well, so that everybody knows what's happened. Is that sort of where you're headed with it, Chris?
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly.
Okay. And then a topic that is this complicated, I know that's hard, but I think recognizing people's concerns, which I think you all do a good job of at Metro Transit, and talking about what you've tried to do to address their concerns. I heard that at the Common Council presentation when you talked about the plan. So I think using that same approach would be great. Is that all you had then, Chris? Okay, thanks. And I may, maybe we can connect and, talk about a couple of summaries and things like that, because this is clearly really important. And just in case I get booted offline, you and I should be in agreement in what we're doing in case you have to step in. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Ann. I guess I have a comment or two on that. We cannot control what people want to speak about, and they can speak about anything they want.
Right.
But I think it behooves us to recognize, to advise people that after the public hearing, the discussion at the following meeting will be about the things that are on our responsibility, not on changing routes or something like that. And I just hope people aren't disappointed, but I think they have to be reminded of that. And that's important is here's clearly defined the issues that will be discussed and voted on the following meeting. Even though, we'll hear all the testimony on numerous things, some of which may or may not be on things that we will be discussing at the following meeting. So does that make sense? I mean, I don't know. Some people will be disappointed, but I think it's what Chris had said. That things that the council has already approved, that we're not revisiting those topics.
We're basically implementing the plan that the council's already approved.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we have to make it very clear that that's what we're, they can voice their concerns or, displeasure or agreements with whatever, but that's not what we are to implement that plan. That's our responsibility.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. Yeah. I have one other, just maybe
Excuse me a second.
Yep.
Mick, did you have a comment on that, Mick?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that all of our bus flyers and our posters mention the specific bullet points of what we're going to be talking about. So we are people might not always, pick up on that, but we do have it in our printed materials. So we are promoting that.
Yeah, and we can't, and they can still speak whatever. That's 3 minutes is theirs. And I guess 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. Oh, that's good to know. I didn't realize 5 minutes. Okay.
It's a public hearing, and one of our special rules, which is a holdover from the Transit and Parking Commission, is that at a public hearing, each of the speakers has 5 minutes. So it's extra time that they have because of the importance of the public hearing.
Okay. Is there a process of who gets to speak first and who speaks last?
That's it's interesting. The Plan Commission had some procedures, and when I put together the public hearing procedures for the Transportation Commission, I looked through those, and it says in there that sometimes people alternate, one in favor, one opposed. We've never done that. Aiden, you just read them off in the order that we get the registrations, correct? And, I guess I've always thought that was as fine a way to do anything. Am I right about that, Aiden? Do you just read them off in the order that they register?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
When can they start registering?
Tomorrow. Well, Aiden, we've worked on, and I believe we have the agenda approved. So Aiden just has to put it together, and then we have to review it. And Aiden, do you think that we'll be able to get it posted tomorrow? I don't want to put any pressure on you, but do you think that would be possible?
Yep. It should be ready by tomorrow and posted.
Okay. Yep. So we would have it ready and out tomorrow. So people should be able to start registering tomorrow.
Okay. And I guess people should know that if they call and say, when I register, where will I be in the, because they're going to say, can I come on, at a certain time or whatever, that's.
I guess, Aiden, will you be able, I don't know how that works. Can you see the reports as people register?
Like what time they registered at? So
yeah, like their number 40 or number 50 or whatever.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so they can email the email address on the agenda, and then Aiden could let them know.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of, obviously we think a lot of people will register, and so, but I know some meetings and some hearings get to be long, and I suspect this one will. So.
Yeah. But you raised an excellent point earlier that Denise has mentioned before, and that is that oftentimes people who come to testify before the Common Council or BCCs are surprised that nobody ever asks them any questions, or that what they say isn't necessarily taken into consideration directly or obviously in the conversation or the decisions that's made. So I think that is frustrating for people when they come to speak. So I'll have to think about how to address that. And that may be something that we do the night that we actually have the discussion about it, when we talk about all of the feedback that we've gotten. And Mick, maybe you can think about that, and Justin, you can think about that as well. When you come back after the public hearing to talk about, have you made any changes as a result of the public hearing? Alder Harrington McKinney asked that last time. What are you going to do with everything that you heard at the public hearing? And so I think, Bill, maybe that would help address that concern. And here comes Alder Harrington McKinney. I said her name, and here she comes. But that was a question that was asked, and it's a valid question. So, I think that if we can address that at the meeting, where we're going to actually make the decision, that would be great. And Mick, you've got your hand up. Go ahead. I
guess my just talking about registration for a second here. I don't know if the registration link will be available right away tomorrow. I know in the past it's just been a week ahead of time, but I'll talk to Aiden offline and try to figure out how we can get that link available further out than just a week.
Well, I believe, Aiden, if you actually publish the agenda tomorrow, it should go on to the meeting website and people should be able to register tomorrow. I think we researched that, didn't we?
I believe so, but let me look into it further.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, Aiden can let us all know if in fact that's not the case, but if we actually post the agenda tomorrow, which is, I mean, we researched, could we post it a month ahead of time? Because I'd never heard of anybody doing that before. And I believe we were told that we could. So, we'll find out tomorrow when it's published, right, Aiden?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Is that all you had then, Bill?
No, actually, I had one other comment or question, and that regards the second meeting, the date for the discussion. Will the alders be able to participate in that as well as ourselves? As will the Transportation Policy and Planning Board members be able to discuss?
Well, so alders, yes. We have invited the Transportation Policy and Planning Board members to attend our meetings, and on all of our agendas, it says there may be a quorum of them available at the meeting. If they choose to come, we as a group would have to suspend the rules and allow them to participate in the meeting. The TPPB has done that for me at several meetings where I have, and Bill, I've done it for you too, where we've attended and had comments to make. I would be in favor of them being able to participate in the discussion, but it would be up to the membership of the Transportation Commission to make any objections and then vote on it if there were objections.
Should we vote on it today?
It's not on the agenda to be voted on today.
We can't do it. Okay.
I don't think so, right, Steve? Mr. Brist?
Yes, that's correct. If it's not on the agenda, we can't vote on it.
So I think it would be better to take it up. And in the past, what I've done is are there any objections to allowing the members of the Transportation Policy and Planning Board to participate in the discussion? And if there are objections, then we would vote on it. If there are no objections, they would just be able to participate.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure.
That's all I have.
Okay, Harold, go ahead.
Two quick things. One follow-up on the order of registrants. So if it is possible to let the people who are registered to know where in the queue they are, I think that would be helpful for them because, as Bill said, some of these meetings can go very long. And so it helps you to give a sense whether you're number 5 or number 50 on the list so that you can plan your evening around that. The other piece to clarify, so at the meeting after the public hearing, we are going to adopt the proposal, or are we going to make a recommendation to the council?
My understanding is there will be a resolution that will be generated sometime between now and then. The timing of that is not nailed down at this point, and that's why we have placeholder language on the agenda for the actual public hearing. But my understanding is we would be normally the Transportation Commission has the ability to make schedule changes and bus stop changes, but this is so big that the whole council is going to be the final decision maker. Am I correct on that, Justin?
Yes, that's correct. We just elected to go that route rather than having TC make a decision and then likely some alder appealing it, which they have the ability to do, and then that would trigger another round of meetings. So in lieu of that, we just thought we'd go straight to a resolution.
Okay, thank you. That is an important clarification. And I think that is also something to communicate with the public, because that, I guess, means then they can/have to show up again when the Common Council takes this up.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll have to work with Steve Brist on this. Down the road, once the resolution is drafted, if we want the public hearing to actually reference the resolution in the exact language, we could amend the agenda for the public hearing so that would be more clear to people. But that's something that we haven't specifically talked about, but that should be very clear by the time, at a minimum, by the time we get to making the decision about it, right, Justin?
That's correct.
Yeah. So,
because, I mean, some people might, because usually the way we do it is that Transportation Commission adopts these route changes, and so some people may have the expectation that that is the case here as well, which it is not.
So maybe I can work that into the summary comments at the public hearing, the intro at the public hearing, Harold.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Just to let people know, like, this is what's happening today, this is what's going to happen 2 weeks from now, and this is what's going to happen after those 2 weeks.
Okay. Yep. I'm going to have to work on this draft. I'm glad you're going to help me with this, Chris. So good to have a second opinion on it. And Justin and Mick, I'll probably run it past you guys as well. So, Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. I think not only will the public hear the information at the beginning of the public hearing from the staff, they would then have the ability after or until we discuss it to submit written comments to us.
Well, people can always submit written comments to us, and we've had that happen multiple times in the past. So I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that.
They could, if they hear something, either made public comments from somebody else, or they hear information that they were not aware of from staff at that beginning. They could send us an email, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see anything wrong with that. Actually, I prefer that, because then they have a chance to really put down in writing what they are interested in. Thanks.
Yeah, and that was one of the points that Mick made on the public participation plan, that you can submit written feedback, and it's nice to be able to have that to review ahead of time as well. So Aiden, we'll have to figure out how we could go about letting people know where they are if we go in the order of registration, we'll have to let people know where they are in the order, exactly how we would go about doing that. Because there could be a whole bunch of people, but I guess we can figure that out. Because I think that's you're right. We could have quite a number of people. Do you recall, Mick or Justin, how many people spoke at the TPPB public hearing?
I certainly don't remember the exact number, but if I had to guess, I would say in the neighborhood of 30. I don't know, Mick, if you have.
I was going to guess 70, but maybe in the middle. Yeah, maybe in the middle.
So we got way more public, because this was like thousands of written comments or called in comments. So if that pattern holds, we may get more feedback that way than we actually have people coming to speak in front of the commission. So the idea of getting those comments weekly, I like that idea a lot, because then we can sort of sift through them and pay more attention to them, rather than if we get them all at one time right before we have to make a decision, right before the public hearing, or right before we have to make a decision about them. Okay, other comments or questions? A lot of work's gone into this, and much appreciate all of the efforts by everybody, both on the commission and at Metro Transit, and Department of Civil Rights. Everybody who's worked on it at the policy board and everybody else, Disability Rights Commission, lots of people have had their hands in this. So other comments or questions? Otherwise, I would look for a motion to approve the request to hold a public hearing on November 9th at 6 o'clock in the manner that's described on the agenda. Harold, I think we actually have a full vote of people now. I think Alder Miadzi is here and Alder Harrington McKinney is here now. So that puts you back in the alternate category. Did you have a comment, Harold?
I think Denise is not here yet.
Oh, you're right. She was supposed to be coming, but maybe she hasn't arrived yet. Has Denise come yet? Do you see her in there, Aiden?
No, she's not here quite yet.
I beg your pardon, Harold. Go right ahead then. You can make your motion. It's hard to do two things at once, you know? Run a meeting and keep track of who's here. Yeah.
I fully understand. Yeah, I move approval of the request to hold a public hearing as described.
Okay. And Bridget, is that a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. All right. There's a motion and a second, and I apologize, Harold. I had Denise marked off as coming late, and I should have waited till she actually got here. Is there further discussion about this topic for the motion? Alder Miadzi.
I'm sorry, I was trying to raise my hand earlier, but when you asked last comments, but I had a meeting with some constituents, mostly the marginalized community, talking about, when we're hosting meetings. And I just wanted to say one comment is that when we're thinking about maps and drawings that we draw up for the public, I think it's important to try to simplify it as much as possible. It's easy for us to look at these schematics and drawings. Being on this board for quite a while, it even took me as an alder a while to look at it and say, okay, how do I read this? Right. But when we're talking about the general public that, usually looks at maps and looks at the drawing and know exactly where East Wash, the corner, this and that, versus people looking at maps. So whatever we can do when we're doing this outreach to simplify it, more better, bigger. So that was, even though a lot of people tell me that they have a hard time chiming in and saying, I don't understand this. I think it's in our purview to try to make things as simplified as possible. So just a comment. Thanks.
Yeah, no, valid observation. And I think, Mick, you've been talking about simple language. So I don't know how you can translate that into the maps, illustrations, et cetera, but maybe see what you all can do with regard to that. Other comments or questions? Okay, I am going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain or wishes a roll call vote. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, the motion is carried, and Mick, you're a go. So you can start putting out the flyers on the buses.
All right, will do.
Okay. Thanks so much for all the efforts. More to come, I know, but appreciate what you've done already. Okay, we will move on now to Lieutenant Fiore, who's here for the quarterly traffic safety report. And before you start, I just got an email today saying this is going to be the last one that you're going to give us. Is that correct?
It is correct. I will be retiring from my 24-year plus career with the Madison Police Department effective November 11th, but my last day in office will actually be next week. So in my replacement will be Lieutenant Jen Hanna. We've been working pretty hard for the last couple of weeks of getting cross training and making sure she can hit the ground running. So the fourth quarter report next January or February will be being done by Lieutenant Hanna. So.
Okay. Well, we wish you the best. I would tell you that I love being retired. So I hope you enjoy being retired as much as I enjoy being retired. And we really do want to thank you so much for what you've done. When I look back at the reports that we used to get and the reports that we get today, you listen to what people wanted to see and were concerned about, and have really made a lot of changes that have provided us with the information that we were seeking. And we very much appreciate that. And we wish you the very best. So we're glad that we have the opportunity to have you here tonight so that we can do that. And thank you for your service. So
thank you. I very much appreciate it and really enjoyed working with this group, and glad the reports were meaningful and of service to this group. And I'm sure that'll continue under Lieutenant Hannah.
Chris, go ahead.
I guess now is the right time to echo that and just say, in addition to the reports, I don't. A lot of folks don't know. I think we're working with Tony on the Vision Zero stuff, and he did a lot of work trying to just revisit how the department looks at traffic stops and equity in traffic stops and all that. So thanks, Tony, and congrats on your retirement.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure working with you, Chris, and Alder Foster, and the group we had together for that group, and working on getting our what we wanted to do and what we wanted our department to be focusing on. As we're putting together the Vision Zero action plan, that's where a lot of the work went into. So hopefully that'll get revisited when it needs to, and not be reactive to something, but certainly continued work to be done there as well. But yeah, I will. I appreciate it and really enjoyed that work that we did on that group. All right, with that, I will share my screen and make sure that I think I'm sharing the slideshow version of it. So we weren't able to get a second quarter report done. We had it ready, and I think I sent it to the group, but certainly some other precedents came up in terms of things that needed to get addressed by the group. So it got pushed back enough that it just made sense to ask if we could just hold off and roll kind of everything into the third quarter report. So I'll looking back on the data, nothing really remarkable stood out in the second quarter in terms of anything that I was seeing that necessarily stood out or would revisit. I know we were able to start doing some report out on the most recent fatal crashes that we've seen. So we'll continue that, and I've caught us up. So we'll cover 3 of those tonight. So you'll see some of it year-to-date numbers that will include the second quarter, but I didn't really identify any second quarter numbers specifically. Just revisiting the goals for the police department in terms of traffic enforcement is focusing on hazardous moving violations as being contributors to our serious and fatal crashes. We continue to support and focus on the high injury network and supporting school zone safety, and be responsive to citizen complaints. Traffic enforcement was identified as part 1 of 3 items identified by the chief and the management team to include in our 2022 strategic plan. And we had specifically identified East Washington Avenue, the Beltline, and Mineral Point Road to receive that increased focused attention. We have approximately 44% of all of our proactive enforcement is occurring on those 3 roadways, with 22% on East Washington Avenue, 19% on the Beltline, and 3% on Mineral Point Road. Just quickly revisiting those maps, the map on the screen on the left of the screen is the main roadways that we work for our traffic grants. Those are roadways identified in collaboration with the Dane County Sheriff's Office, and by necessity for those grants, those have to be shared roadways. So it limits us a little bit in where we can focus our efforts on the grants, but they do they're pretty consistent with a lot of the hotspot areas that we see on the high injury network. Just touching really quick on grant activity we actually wrapped up our grant activity for the year, if you will. We operate those grants on the federal fiscal year, so October 1st to the end of September. So I just wanted to give an update in terms of what we would consider the grant cycle or year. Throughout this year of the grant, over the last 12 months, we've been able to do 65 impaired driving deployments, 41 seatbelt, 34 speeding, and 28 pedestrian and bike safety. The speeding and pedestrian and bike safety efforts are really confined to the warmer months. So and we weren't able to even get speeding going, the speed grants going until June. The ped bike ones, again, I think on June 1st, we started doing those. And those are really just kind of based on when WSDOT opens up those grants and we can get our paperwork in and everything lined up so we can receive that money. So it's a pretty compressed time frame that we're able to get those grants in. Through those enforcement efforts, we issued a little over 1,500 citations and about 2,200 warnings. On average, a deployment lasts for about 4 hours. We look to have 6 officers per deployment, and sometimes we don't get a full deployment, but we try to get 6 officers out on each of those deployments. And we average about 23 citations or warnings per deployment. That should say third quarter fatal and serious crash locations. That I didn't update the slide title. We had 3 fatal crashes in the third quarter and 27 serious injury crashes. There were I shouldn't say crashes. There were 24 crashes that resulted in 27 serious injuries and 3 fatalities. 2 of those were on the Beltline, and then the one fatal crash, the MV versus bicyclists on Flom Road, we touched on briefly at the last meeting. The first crash that we hadn't covered yet with this group occurred on the Beltline and Agricultural Drive. It was actually on the Beltline, but the closest roadway was agriculture for our reporting purposes. It was a pedestrian on the roadway on the Beltline, early morning hours, so 5:11 a.m., just starting to get light out. I don't even know if I would, from what I heard from the officers, there was some lightness on the horizon, but it wasn't really enough light to light up the roadway. The pedestrian was in a lane of traffic. A pickup truck towing a boat was driving westbound. Had no opportunity to avoid the crash, or very limited opportunity considering size, weight, and speed of the vehicle. Very low opportunity to avoid the crash. And again, the main causative factor that we're aware of right now, I don't believe we've gotten any toxicology back on the victim in that crash, but certainly having a pedestrian in that stretch of road where very, very few people, or it's not common to be really looking for that type of highway hazard when you're driving down the Beltline. So early morning hours, I don't believe that area is lit at all by any overhead light. So would have been extremely challenging for the motorist to avoid that crash. The next crash was out on Highway AB. That was just on September 30th. The information that we have, there's still investigations to be done. It was a motor vehicle versus motor vehicle. We believe the vehicle traveling southbound on AB did not stop at all for the intersection and collided with a vehicle that was traveling eastbound on the Beltline. Speed and impairment, we know with one driver that was arrested on scene or at the time of the crash for OWI, and believe the victim. We do have some information or belief that the other driver, there was some impairment there as well. The most recent fatal crash was just a couple days after that. It was a lone motorcyclist. It was not directly witnessed by anybody, but all information is that the motorcycle driver was taking the ramp to go from eastbound Beltline to southbound Park Street or Highway 14, failed to negotiate the exit ramp and lost control of the motorcycle, causing fatal injuries. We're still waiting on that investigation is ongoing as well, but we do have some reason to believe that impairment was a factor in that crash as well. Any questions on any of those three crashes that anybody has? Okay. Overall, our serious and fatal crashes are, I hate to normalize it, but they're trending overall down, continue to be down over the time frame that we're looking at, which is the beginning of 2017. We do see seasonal and quarterly fluctuations in those numbers, as the graph would represent, that we continue to have our work cut out for us, but that overall it's, I think, probably the most shocking that I've been a part of in this position was the high rates that we had in the one quarter in 2021 on East Washington Avenue. So we haven't seen any dramatic spike in the numbers in terms of that, and would follow seasonal patterns that we would come to expect. The causative factors in the crashes were a little bit interesting. We see more pedestrian bike involvement, certainly in warmer weather. So that higher number than average is a little bit to be expected, because the averages do take into account the winter months as well, when we don't see as much interaction between bikes and pedestrians and motor vehicles. But we did see a drop off in speed and seatbelt. I don't really have anything to attribute that to. So I'm just not sure where that dip in the numbers came from, but certainly something to keep an eye on in terms of a higher level of compliance, possibly, hopefully, that the seatbelt use would continue to fall, and overall contributing factors to the serious crashes. Moving on for our citations and warnings, we continue to trend generally towards pre-2020 levels. That's not necessarily a goal. This is a way of comparison of kind of our overall activity level in the area of citations and warnings. We are generally where we were at about the last or first quarter of 2021. Our non-hazardous citation numbers continue to be low and trending lower, which is what we would prefer. We want to continue to focus on the hazardous citations and warnings. Another way of looking at the same information, again, that the bars are about reaching early 2020 levels. Again, that's not necessarily a goal. We're not trying to see it, but we have seen increased and pretty consistent enforcement activities throughout the department and our grant efforts since we had to slow things down considerably in 2020. Graph just showing our overall breakdown of citations for hazardous versus non-hazardous violations. We continue to see that trend generally in the direction we want in terms of our stated goals to focus on hazardous moving violations and de-emphasize or seek non-citation outcomes for non-hazardous violations. Moving on to traffic complaints. Generally, I think we saw a 1% increase over third quarter from last year to this year. I think over average, I think the average for third quarter complaints is about 252. They're continued to draw from throughout the city. There's no real focal area other than the complaints we receive generally for cruiser type activity on East Washington Avenue during the warmer months. But generally, they continue to fall throughout the city, and those complaints get passed on to district as well as our test personnel, so that we can give the area some attention or do some investigating on our own to determine the nature of the problems with the roadway. Some of those warrant more attention. Some of those we simply just don't have the resources to spend in some areas that aren't necessarily. We do spend time in complaint areas, but if it's not necessarily a real good use of our time, we simply don't have enough traffic officers to give those much attention. So we do move on from some of those complaint areas that we aren't seeing the same thing that the complainant might have concerns about. I would say overall we're pretty steady in the volume of the complaints that we receive to the police department, and wouldn't see any reason to expect that to increase or decrease. We did receive a number of last year during the second quarter when we were having significant challenges on East Washington Avenue, that pushed those numbers up some, but overall they are about where we would expect them to be. Looking at the next 90 days, we would continue to see East Washington Avenue be an area of concern, as well as the Isthmus area, particularly high-density pedestrian and bicyclist areas that aren't maybe mirrored in other parts of the city, as well as a few hot spots on Stoughton Road, as well as McKenna Gammon near the Beltline, which continues to be problematic. Focusing on East Washington Avenue, by year, so far, knock on wood, we have not seen any fatal crashes on East Washington Avenue, and just 6 serious injuries as a result of crashes on East Washington Avenue. Hope that continues to trend in that direction 3/4 of the way through the year. Certainly at a much better place in terms of, I think, the longer stretches of slower speeds, and the increased enforcement presence that we have given it for the last 2 years really hopefully is making some impacts in those areas. Overall, in the last quarter, the serious and fatal injuries that occurred on East Washington Avenue comprised just 7% of those types of injuries that we see citywide. So it's certainly in going back to the first and second quarter of 2021, we saw that percentage be pretty dramatic in terms of it really contributing to a significant number of our serious and fatal crashes. And we have that back to a more manageable level. Just to show, again, the over time of how we see those numbers come in specifically to East Washington Avenue. And it's hard to get a gauge on trend lines or where we're at or what we can expect long term, but certainly happy to see the number of fatalities that East Washington experienced go back into the 0 range, and certainly get off of that trend that we were experiencing last year. Again, just another way to represent that, the overall combination of serious and fatal crashes on East Washington Avenue by quarter. Citations on East Washington Avenue. We continue to focus on that on East Washington Avenue, both through patrol grant efforts as well as our traffic officers. Continue to see a good high level of citations and warnings, focusing on that stretch of road. Just another way to show how we trend our enforcement over time on East Washington Avenue. We continue to give East Washington Avenue a high percentage of overall enforcement efforts as compared to the rest of the city. Again, about 22% of all of our enforcement efforts are occurring on East Washington Avenue. And I touched on it earlier in one of the first slides, but overall, we continue to give East Washington Avenue, the Beltline, the largest percentages of focus, and continue to work on Mineral Point Road as one of our strategic plan roadways. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll just leave the slide up in case there's any questions related to the material.
Before we move on to Yang's section, do people have questions for Lieutenant Fiore? Alden Miadzi, go ahead.
And just a quick question. I don't know where this falls in, but it's weird. The other day I saw 2 cars with, I don't know, within an hour apart, but without license plate on it. Where does that citation fall at, and what do you guys do about it? Just out of curiosity.
Sure. It would fall into our it's considered a non-hazardous violation. So it's an area that we ask officers not necessarily to focus on, but certainly within the officer's discretion to take enforcement action, particularly with no license plates visible. Oftentimes, it could be a stolen vehicle. So one of our strategic plan goals as well is to specifically address stolen vehicles. And one of the ways that often those are one of the first things that gets done after a vehicle is stolen is that the license plates get removed. So it's certainly within the officer's discretion to address vehicles with non-registration. It is a challenge because at the same time we are asking them to focus on hazardous violations for the safety aspect, but certainly enforcement aspects in terms of determining why that vehicle is not displaying any registration is part of an enforcement effort in another strategic area. So we are certainly know that puts officers in a challenging position in terms of trying to stay true to our goals in traffic enforcement, but also they have a direction given to address the stolen auto problem that we have right now in the city, and part of that is looking at license plates. Generally, again, if it's just a matter of somebody they recently purchased a vehicle or they haven't been able to update their registration or their plates got stolen, certainly that's an educational opportunity. We hope that for common errors with registration that officers are seeking non-citation outcomes for those. But certainly they still do have the discretion to issue citations. We've not taken that tool away from officers, but that's generally how they're addressed.
Yeah, thank you for your service again, and have a happy retirement.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Other comments or questions? I just want to pose one with regard to Mineral Point Road. I signed up for getting the email at 4:00 every day that talks about the incidents in the city. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that there was a pedestrian was critically injured last evening at Mineral Point Road and High Point Road. So, I mean, do you see efforts needing to increase on Mineral Point Road, or how do you view that compared to the Beltline and East Washington Avenue?
Mineral Point's really challenging. We had that fatal motorcycle or bicycle versus vehicle earlier in the year. It's an area that we continue to focus on. We can't give it the attention that the other roadways get through our grant opportunities, which account for a significant amount of attention that we are able to give those roadways. It's something that we've talked about with the county because it would be an available shared roadway, but it would be something that we would have to continue to revisit with them and to see if on their side of the tracks, if you will, in the county, that they're having the same concerns with that stretch of roadway. It doesn't make sense for them to dedicate their deputies out in that roadway. So it is it is a bit of a challenge to address it like we do, particularly the Beltline and East Washington Avenue. But we still see some significant challenges on Mineral Point Road. It's a big, long, well-engineered roadway for moving a lot of vehicles at a higher rate of speed. But then when you get around the West Town Mall area, it really starts to put a lot of things into play. The crash from on the recent one, it is very significant injuries. We're hoping that the pedestrian and that their condition doesn't worsen. It was again a matter of a lot of things going on. We still have a lot of investigating to do in that crash in terms of what the driver's telling us was happening at the time. We don't have any right now. We don't have any independent information in terms of where the cross lights were, in their cycle and things like that. So we've got a lot of work to do yet in that investigation, but certainly the West District's pretty big. We have one dedicated traffic officer to cover the entirety of the West District. And it's not an identified roadway for our grants to work. Certainly there are other roadways that are challenging as well, but certainly the fact that we've had 2 fatalities and historically Mineral Point does have a number of fatalities on any given year. So I think it's certainly worthy of our continued attention. It's just a challenge to work that stretch of road in a real concerted effort with a lot of resources right now.
Sure. Understood. But it just caught my eye when I saw the report today at 4:00 and thought, oh no, not another one on Mineral Point Road.
Yeah, unfortunately it was, and the officers did a great job doing the initial investigation. The driver of the vehicle was cooperative, and so we're hoping to get a better understanding of that in the coming days, and be able to figure out the resolution and figure out exactly what happened with that crash. Hopefully in the next week or so.
Okay, thanks. I know that just happened, but it did catch my eye. Other questions for Lieutenant Fiore? If not, if I could have a motion to accept his report, and then we'll move on to Yang's safety data update. Bill? Is that a motion?
I thought I hit mute. Yes, I'd like to make a motion for acceptance of Lieutenant Fiore's report. Thank you.
Okay. Alder Miyadzi. Thank you. Alder Miyadzi, is that a second?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to abstain or vote no, or have a roll call vote. If so, please raise your hand. Alder Miyadzi, I assume your hand is still up from the second? Okay, thanks. All right, and Yang, if you want to do your safety data update, and I just want to make sure that we say again, thank you so much, Lieutenant Fiore, for everything that you've done for the city and for your service and for how much you've helped the Transportation Commission. So virtual round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure over 24 plus years and have nothing but great memories. So very proud of my career and appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you. Thanks so much. Yang, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I also want to thank Lieutenant Fiore for another excellent report in front of the commission. For those of you who remember, from just a few years ago, the report was quite different. So during the tenure of Lieutenant Fiore in his current position, he really collaborated with us and made a lot of improvements on the report and bring a lot more meaningful information and data to the commission. So I think that's that's something that really, really positive, and it shows the collaboration among everyone. Lieutenant Fiore has been such wonderful partner to work with on the Vision Zero team. We definitely will miss him a lot. So for my part, Tony talked about give a really good summary about the data, the safety situation and on enforcement. So I think my part will be kind of complementing to his part, from a Vision Zero approach, and which enforcement, is part of that. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Hope I can find the right slide. I think they see the right one. Yeah. Can everyone see the slides okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Okay. First, just really quick update on where we are with Vision Zero, some of the recent progresses that we have made. As you all know that we complete a comprehensive Vision Zero action plan, and that really laid out a systematic approach for us to follow, to address the safety situation and improve safety, trying to eliminate all the fatal and serious injuries, with a clear roadmap in mind. So we've been taking advantage of that, and as you can see, from the grant application that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So that's a really big effort for a staff team, and we also received a lot of really good guidance, from all the folks here, and we really appreciate all the guidance on that. And we've been, as you all know, that the EU has been, a really big part of rolling out Safe Streets medicine projects. Safe Streets medicine program, this is the first year. And, we really feel like it's, much improvement compared to, structure we had before, especially, considering now we're getting more requests from our residents on a daily basis. And, we're dealing a lot of, challenges in safety. So, the focus is that the program, gave us, on safety in hybrid network, addressing vulnerable road users, pedestrian bicyclists, facing the gaps in those facilities, and do all of that in an equitable way. So that's, I would say that's going on really well, and we'll be rolling out 2 phases of projects. So the only bad part is that, the bids for those projects came out much higher than previous years, unfortunately, due to inflation. I think many of you probably had the same experience, when you make other purchases. So because of that, initially we were planning, to bring the third phase of projects to the commission in the fall or in the winter. And after the latest accounting, we really don't have much money left. So we're not bringing third phase for 2022, but we're working on maybe bring some projects early in 2023 to the commission and get a phase of project going, as requests keep coming in, and we do want to moving additional projects as quickly as we can. I think has also been working with Anne and some council members, also looking at, since we're not looking at the program, since now we had a program for a year, and it's a great program. and we're also thinking about continuous improvement. So we may be bring the program back and give the commission some thoughts as staff implementing it, maybe suggest some improvements that we can consider making. But again, overall, this is such a good program. And as we work on the Safe Streets for All federal grant application, as we show it to our consultants, they are pretty impressed by what you have done. So thank you for the new program. Another thing I want to touch on quickly is the community engagement we have been doing through Vision Zero. I always feel like that's the part that we have been weak traditionally. We've been focusing on providing engineering measures, but I really believe that engineering measures are important, but really has to be coupled with all other initiatives, such as engagement, because all our users play a critical role in the transportation system, in the safety outcome out of it. So we've been partnering with different agencies, taking advantage of all kinds of opportunities, and we did lots of public engagement in different communities, starting from the Spring Safety Saturday all the way through summer, sort of Park of Life events. So we touched many communities and talked to many different people, and received a lot of really good input, project ideas, and also was able to connect with the neighborhoods, our residents, on the idea of Vision Zero, to promote a better safety culture. So I have been, very pleased with that, with that going on all through summer, and a lot of city staff volunteered to do this, because this is mostly after work. So, and on top of their regular job responsibilities, and we hope to keep this going in the future years, since we received so many positive public feedbacks. I think more importantly, I really feel like we are changing our design and operations philosophy. Really putting safety first, and really refuse to believe fatality is part of price to pay for mobility. And we really believe, even one death is traumatic. So I'm really encouraged to see the shift in philosophy, in staff, and also in the public. So hopefully we'll keep institutionalize this philosophy for our future work. And also, I'm happy to report that our work has been recognized nationally. For example, the National League of Cities had a really good article featuring Madison's work on Vision Zero, and recently we're invited to the National Association of City Transportation Officials annual meeting in Boston, and talk about our work in Vision Zero, and discuss the future of Vision Zero for this country. As you all know, that Vision Zero really hasn't been doing very well in other parts of the country. So we also being regular by US DOT during their launch event for their kind of national Vision Zero initiative, which is called a National Roadway Safety Strategy. And we are pursuing and leveraging federal safety grants As you all know, that we already received 3 highway safety improvement grants to make improvements at the intersections in the city, including the Mirror Point and High Point intersection, which unfortunately we had the tragic crash yesterday. So hopefully when these are implemented, this will help to reduce those crashes and reduce the severity as well. And we'll talk about the Safe Streets for All grant application a little bit later in the next item. So I really feel like our community are putting a lot of work into this, and even though I've been doing this for very long, I really feel like it's having impact, right? Even though given a short amount of time, statistically, it's going to be hard to predict a long-term trend. But I do want to share some kind of short-term data with you, and these are on top of some improvements we've already seen, like in 2021. And this set of data compares, the situation for the first half of this year with the first half of last year. So this slide is about citywide data. So the figure on the left shows the total number of crashes in a city. So we can see that from 2021 to 2022, for the first half of the year, the total number of crashes went down by 5%. That actually is not a whole lot, to be honest with you. 5% could be, could be a stick error. However, on the right-hand side, if we look at the fatalities and the serious injuries, we saw a significant reduction from 2021 to 2022. We're down by 29%. So that's actually quite significant. Tony talked about East Washington Avenue, and that's one corridor has been so challenging in the last couple of years. So this set of data is about East Washington Avenue. So actually, for total number of crashes for the first half of 2022, it actually went up by 6% compared to the same time period in 2021. However, if you look at the fatalities and serious injuries, again, we saw a huge reduction by 33%. Particularly for fatalities, we didn't have any fatalities for the first half of the year, and actually that's still the case, till today, and hopefully, that goes on for the rest of the year and hopefully forever. That we didn't lose any life on the corridor this year. So that's that's a big improvement. And again, these data is by no means will predict a long-term trend, but we feel like it is important to look at this frequently, as it does provide feedback to us as we carry out so much work through Vision Zero, and we want to adjust what we do if we need. We want to keep doing what we think might be successful, and I would say that for this case, we definitely feel like we have worked together. We figured out a right direction, and I really feel like we should capitalize on the momentum. Let's do more, and we'll not stop until the the right column went down to there in the city. So with that, thank you, and I'm ready to take any questions you may have.
Alder Miazzi, go ahead.
I've not really taken up boat lines that often, but recently. But there's been a few accidents. Can you just give a brief update of the extra lane that was added on the boat line there? Of what do you think of it, and if there's a lot of accidents that you want to report or anything about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Miyazi. Yeah, and also I'm happy to have my colleague Lieutenant Fiore here with me. So we are paying attention to that, but boat line actually is not under our jurisdiction, so we haven't been spending a lot of resources on that. However, in terms of enforcement, Tony and the team has done some work, and I can ask him to maybe to share his experience with that project.
Sure, it's we've certainly given the Beltline considerable attention this summer, particularly the last couple of months. We've had some complaints in terms of the flex lane getting used as kind of the ultra high speed lane, the left lane on steroids, and those observations are consistent with things that we've seen. The trick is that it has successfully reduced congestion, creating more lanes for that traffic to spread out, which creates opportunities for those vehicles to go faster, the ones who choose to. And it's during peak volumes when it's more challenging for us, and in areas where it's challenging for us to enforce. So I don't know that I've got the data to say whether those increased speeds or the flow of traffic is making things safe or less safe, but it's definitely that those observations are consistent with my own, and certainly reports that we're hearing from officers in the community that that lane can get treated as the ultra fast lane, which it's certainly not intended to be. We haven't seen a lot of off peak hours when the flex lane is closed, that people are using that lane. Certainly that could happen on a occasional basis, but we haven't seen a consistent pattern of people using that lane when it's marked as closed. So it's, I think it's still early in how that lane gets utilized and what the experience for us is going to be on it. But those things that we're seeing are pretty consistent with the feedback we're getting from the community as well.
That answer your question, Alder Miyazi?
Yeah, thanks for the update, and sorry it's one of those third shift questions that I asked the wrong guy. So sorry about that. Thanks for the update, though.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, that's okay.
Other comments or questions for Yang? Harold, go ahead.
I mean, just very briefly, I want to say thanks to Yang and all the other city staff who have been really working on this. And while I am the first one to be cautious about not over-interpreting the improvements that we have seen, I mean, think it still looks good. I'm optimistic, and we have put so much work in there, and we continue to do so. So let's keep going and be at least somewhat happy for now. And yeah, take that for what it is. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Harold. And everyone, for helping us to get to this far, right? Yeah, you're exactly right. So yeah, it's we don't know what future looks like, and but we are sure the road is going to be bumpy. It's not going to be a smooth ride. We're going to see up and downs. But I really feel like data make a lot of sense to me, right? We actually didn't see crashes reduce that much. People still make mistakes. Crashes still happen. However, though, the severity of the crash has been reduced quite a bit. that's really the essence of Vision Zero. We humans going to be humans, and we really, if we're trying to prevent all the crashes, prevent humans from making mistakes, that's not going to work very well. But let's really focus on, use Vision Zero philosophy, focus on those that cause really bad consequences that change people's life forever. I do think, the data gave us some confirmation on that, and we do feel more confident that we should do more what we have been doing. So, thanks.
Thanks, Yang. Any other comments or questions for Yang on this item? Because we're going to roll into another one that's quite related to what we've just been talking about. Okay, thanks. And thanks again, Lieutenant Fiore, for your service. And again, virtual round of applause. Thanks so much. We very much appreciate all that you've done for the city and for the Transportation Commission, and wish you well in your retirement. And Yang, thanks to you for everything that you do on an ongoing basis. And we look forward to hearing from you about the next item, the update on Safe Streets and Roads for All federal grant application.
Okay. Good evening. Yeah, everyone. Yeah, so really, I'm not going to cover this item. So okay. I will do a kind of quick introduction and talking kind of more about the grant in general. And Renee will go through the projects. The project is with us, which we have quite a long list of projects, as you have seen probably. And Renee has spent a lot of time and good thoughts on that. So she has done the heavy lifting on putting that a wonderful list of projects together, very thoughtful way. So as you will see, from her part of the presentation. But I would like to start, by saying thanks to all of you, for your support on this, right? As we bring the item to the commission and asking for support to apply for a $20 million, federal grant that for something not focus on a big infrastructure or like a segment of roadway. $20 million is a lot, so that's the biggest we have ever done. For small safety improvement projects, and we received so much support from you, and after that, the staff team really have done a lot of good work, putting everything together in a very short amount of time. So I'm happy to report back that we were able to submit the application, and now it's under the review of U.S. DOT. Our application is titled Forward to Vision Zero, Madison, Building Safe Streets for All Through Data, Smart Street Design, Equity, and Engagement. That's a long name, but I think actually summarizes what we're trying to do really well. And we also propose something I guess really represents Wisconsin. That forward spirit. We need to be the first, pilot new things. As we really want to be the first B-Summit city in the United States to achieve the Vision Zero goal, and we feel like we can with the support from federal government, from the state, we can do it, and we can show the rest of the country that the Vision Zero can actually work in the United States, right? Since there has been a lot of criticism on Vision Zero initiatives. In other cities in United States, saying that it's not working. It's nowhere as good as what's happening in Europe. There's a lot of truth in that. We have our limitations, but still we feel like by doing step by step, getting more ambitious, taking bigger strides, we can do it. So, this proposal really is, I would say, like a pilot to, prove that concept. So we proposed, 48 infrastructure improvement projects, all in equity priority areas that identified, by U.S. DOT or by the city, along with 21 operational and behavioral strategies over the entire city, especially the high injury network. Additionally, with 4 planning activities to supplement the existing vision direction plan. So that's very different from the applications from other cities that I know. We're really trying to create a large number of projects and a wider variety of projects that we want to cover, a big area of the city, especially again in those disadvantaged neighborhoods. We want to, encourage the public in meaningful conversation on traffic safety through, the engagement as we work on these projects. That's why we propose a lot of, engagement components in all the different projects, and we really want to create a lasting impact in our community, not just from these physical projects, but through the conversations that we will have, by discussing these projects with the neighborhood, and by promoting, the visionary philosophy and a better safety culture. So, that's very different from some other city strategies, focus on, couple corridors, for example, and, making, big investments, like, a very small amount of area. So our approach, I think our strategy is different. And actually, it's much more difficult to put together application as I think really can go through some of the challenges as you are dealing with so many projects instead of like 1 or 2 bigger projects in terms of logistics. So I will quickly share my screen, and so this, as you can see, is the narrative of our application. This document is kind of the main document that make our statement. Talking about the data, the projects, the ready list, and lots of other considerations. I'm talking about why US DOT should select us based on those criteria that they identified. So definitely we we work a lot, spend a lot of time putting this together with the help of our consultant. And so the mayor had a cover letter for this. And we also put some key information here at the very beginning. I want to highlight some of the information here. I think one key number I want to emphasize is that the funds that go directly to those underserved communities. So we identified over $7 million funds for that. And the total cost for supplemental kind of planning activities, that's a little bit over $300,000, and total cost for conducting planning, design, and development, that's about $3.5 million. And the total cost for implementing these project strategies is about $16 million. And again, as you go through the projects, you will see that we have a very heavy focus on equity. And also, we provide links here that that actually make us qualify for this grant. That's the Vision Zero Action Plan, and we also include the Safe Streets Medicine. That very proud way, and that's really a framework that we're going to use to carry out these projects. And that's a framework that we use to prioritize, different project ideas, and kept those came on top. After applying this Safe Streets Medicine framework. So those are kind of key information, and I will not go through the details, but it was divided into different sections. But one number maybe I want to highlight is something that as we work through the application, something we realized during our Vision Zero engagement, we found we actually were able to get 1,513 residents engaged through the process. That was a mind-blowing number if you think about that. Again, I really believe that Vision Zero, the systematic approach, is not just about infrastructure. It's about it's about everyone. I guess that's that's kind of the project narrative. It's 10 pages, plus the cover letter, things like that. As we go through this, I want to say that we build in a lot of links through our document. So you can click on all these different links, and that will get you to all the different documents. For example, these are all the support letters. And by the way, thanks to many of you here actually for providing those support letters through your positions with your day jobs. So really appreciate that. You can find all kinds of information, including also a project list, the project schedule, for the high injury network, for example. Those are project map. Also, detailed project maps. So with that, I'll transition to Renee, and she'll talk about the different projects.
All right. So before I dive into talking about the project list that was shared with everyone, I just want to say, there were so many projects that we started with. You start out thinking, okay, we're going to apply for $20 million. We have a resolution that says that we can, we have the match for that. And it feels like a lot. 20 million sounds like a lot. But then you start building your list, and we started with our Safe Streets Madison list because we already have a really good list of places of concern. And we have that prioritization process. So we felt like that's really our starting point. But from that, we did take a look at our high injury network. We know that we have a lot more things that we can add to that list, which may be over 400 now, but still always growing. We also wanted to dive into some more things. So, we looked at the HIN. We have some information on, like crashes at night, pet bike crashes, and really tried to dig into that. We looked at our sidewalk gaps, and we have the comp plans priority list, and we know that not all of those priorities have been done. We looked at our level of stress for bicycling. We tried to look at where all of these things were kind of overlapping, and we're really working on that as we're waiting for more details and more priorities from the US DOT, trying to get ready, and thinking like, we need to have a big list for $20 million. And then we had to start thinking about feasibility. Once the US DOT started to come out with their things, and they're saying, you need to be able to do all these projects in 5 years. So there has to be this, you have to show us that you're ready to do this. This is the first year of this program. They obviously have a lot there's a lot riding on this being a success for the US DOT as well. So, that cuts out some things. There's, with the time frame that we had to work with, a lot of different partnerships just really weren't going to be possible in this first year. Not to say that over the course of this program, those things are going to make great projects as we can build that. But we really felt like we needed to apply for things that the city could do, that we knew that we could do, and that they were not going to have problems in that 5 years. So that definitely, moves some things out of the line. And then after that, they had a lot of webinars, a lot of national nonprofits who were really liaisoning with the US DOT, who are also super invested in this program. We're also having webinars to kind of share out what they had learned and what they saw from their perspective. And what we heard is obviously, number one, safety. This program is all about safety. Safety is in the name. But beyond that, what we were hearing is this idea of equity, and this idea that they really wanted to see projects that didn't just say the word equity, but were saying, we see what you as the US DOT think are the areas where you need to address equity. And we'll see that in our project list. And then we also heard them saying, we like big, we like kind of projects that feel big to a city. They were saying they're more small and medium-sized projects, but US DOT medium-sized is big for the city. But also that they really wanted to see kind of lower cost things that you could do on a broader scale to have an impact, not just in one corridor. And many cities chose to go with one corridor because, that's where they can see that safety impact. But we were hearing that message. So you'll see that built into our application as well. And it was shockingly easy to get to $20 million. And also, they have been promoting very heavily the safe systems approach, which we really tried, which is built into our Vision Zero plan. We tried to kind of reflect that in what we applied for. And they also have been putting a big push on complete streets, which we are doing that as well here, complete and green streets. So we really tried to also reflect that. And then they also, are hoping to see some things around climate change, sustainability, economic competitiveness, things like that as well. So we did try to reflect that as much as possible. And now I'm going to share the list, which some of you may have had a chance to look at. I'm not going to go through everything, but you'll see these first ones that are kind of the orangey peach color. These are the census tracts that the US DOT has listed in Madison as their top disadvantaged census tracts. And so those are where we wanted to make sure that we were putting a focus. When they say one of the criteria is equity, they actually say equity, engagement, and collaboration. So you'll see a lot of engagement funds to really try to take our engagement to the next level. I feel like it totally fits with what you were talking about with the Metro Transit, right? It's what can we do that is better than what we've been doing, that is more inclusive, and where we're building relationships with communities through this project. So in some of these, you'll see it doesn't say we're going to do this in this exact location. It says these are some proposed locations, and we're going to be working with the neighborhood. Some of them aren't in exact locations. For instance, on this first one, raised intersections on the Southwest commuter path. We feel like that's something that is borne out by kind of what we see in the data and what we've already heard. But in other cases, we know, okay, we are asking for a certain pot of money, but it might not be able to do every single thing. So let's work together to help figure out the priorities. And you'll see that through a number of these with both, increasing connections and with speed management. And that speed management part, when we did our Parks Alive events this summer, one of the things we asked people was, what are your top 3 kind of priorities from different types of street improvements or different types of streets we might make improvements on? And we heard a variety of different things, but we tended to pretty much everyone selected as one of their things, speed management on residential streets. And so we wanted to, reflect that we heard that, and that people want to see their streets that are quiet, that feel safe, that feel like you can let your kids play outside, that they can go places. So we did want to reflect that and work with the neighborhoods to ensure that streets in all of our neighborhoods look and feel like that. So these are all the orange ones, are sort of those US DOT priority areas. And then the blue are ones that we're calling more city priority areas. This includes campus, because we know that we have a very large university, and we ask people to come to our university here and to not bring a car and to walk, bike, and take transit. And so we wanted to ensure that we included some projects that would, sort of address campus areas. And you'll see this one, Regent Street. It's really money to do the engagement, to come up with a design and do those construction documents. Engineering feels like we do have some money that can go towards the actual construction, but that we would really like to dive into this and do a really strong corridor plan based on the safe systems approach and complete streets, so that we can build Regent Street back as the best possible street that we can. And we know that it has safety concerns, and we really want to come up with a plan that addresses those, and so that we don't see them going into the future. Other ones that we have on the city list are kind of more NRT, neighborhood resource team areas, such as the Warner Park, Vericourt, Mendota area, Meadow Ridge, Orchard Ridge area, kind of more the Leopold area, and some areas that, and a project kind of in the town of Madison area to support safety, as that is now coming into the city very soon. And that sort of Easttown Sycamore Park area, where we're going to have the new Autumn Ridge path coming, and we want to ensure that it connects in with safe facilities for people walking and biking. The next kind of yellowish section is those things that are kind of would be spread across the city. We didn't detail everyone out, but we would use the high injury network, we would use data, and we would definitely also use equity in selecting where those are. A few things I want to call out particularly is we have some funding in here to increase our accessible pedestrian signals. And the plan would be to kind of work on our policy and, work with Jess and the council on the blind and visually impaired to kind of come up with a good policy for placing what we hope will fund around 40 new locations to help, ensure that everyone is safe traveling. Some other things, we put in here some quick build kind of projects. We've been doing a little bit of that. And what we'd like to do is really increase our partnerships and sort of our capacity to do those by finding some partner organizations who kind of want to work with us, and where we would be able to provide some funding to do some workshops and some community engagement and come up with what those projects are. And then potentially those would be things that we would build with funds from, maybe the crossing line item or protected bike lanes or speed manage, some of those, but kind of have that built in to get things going. We also realized that there's a lot of new ideas that we're doing here at the city, right? We've got Vision Zero, we've got Complete and Green Streets, there's new guidebooks, there's new ways of doing things. And so we want to make sure that all of our staff are well-trained and comfortable with those design ideas. And we definitely want to be able to support new engineers, young engineers that we're hiring who are excited to do this work. And, with this training, we'll really be able to run with it and help us as we design the safest city possible. And then we have a maintenance support item. We know that we put out a lot of good, say, pavement markings, but we have a lot of things that dig up our streets and patch them. And it's really hard to hire a contractor to do a quarter of a crosswalk here and then a half a crosswalk over there and a couple parts of the block of bike lane somewhere. So we'd really just like to have the ability to get out and fix those right away. And then we have that supplemental action planning that was mentioned as well. Oops, went too far there. We would like to update our pedestrian plan. It's from 1997, and it feels like the time is right to do that. And to help us really prioritize all the projects that we could do. We're starting to collect a lot more data with Vision Zero, and I think we can put it to good use with some supplemental planning. And the US DOT is very keen on planning. Just because you have an action plan, they don't want you to think your work in that realm is done. So we want to do that. We've also been working with Complete and Green Sheets on this idea of all ages and ability bike network. And I think that it's going to really need some more time to really get that fleshed out and get it to the point that it needs to be, and so that we can start to prioritize the gaps and ensure that we're really providing that across the city. So we've put in some funding to do that work as well. And we put in some money to continue our school travel planning. We recently were lucky enough to get a grant from the DOT to start that work, but we didn't ask for enough to do every single school. So this would allow us to add hopefully around 6 more. And we really want to keep that work going so that we can update every school's travel plan in the near future. And then post-crash care, that's something that's in the safe systems approach and that we haven't done a lot of work on. So we thought, okay, let's start with some funding to start looking at the data. We absolutely, if there is a crash, know that response times and the ability to provide immediate care makes a difference in the outcome as well. And so we want to make sure that we are taking a look at that and ensuring that people are getting that care that they need. And then we want to keep looking at our high injury network. We want to review more on our crashes. We want to do more around this whole idea of predictive modeling, so we can be more proactive as well. And so we put some funding in there to continue that work. It's not fully detailed out because, we want to see what we can do with some of the other planning efforts and supplement that with things focused on the high injury network. And then I'm going to come to one that might be a little controversial. But sometimes it's good to try some things out. And this one is asphalt art. There was a big study from the Bloomberg funded a bunch of asphalt art, and they did a study to kind of look at where was it making a difference, particularly around safety. And we get a lot of requests for this because other cities are doing it. So we thought, well, better just to put some money in and push ourselves to look at that data and see what would work and work with our partners and ensure that what we would do improve safety. It doesn't have negative impacts. There definitely can be negative impacts, particularly thinking about crosswalk art and how people see that who might have visual impairments. But we thought this would be a good chance to get some money and work with the committee and see what we think. Next is kind of the other broader safe systems items. Like I said, they did really push in their webinars, not just being infrastructure, but really looking beyond that and planning and into the other kind of safe people, safe vehicle, safety focused enforcement kinds of things. So some more funding on just really kind of bolstering our engagement and coming up with a plan that will work with all of our projects, not just the ones funded here, but going forward. We know that we want to do a better job. We also know that we want to do more around evaluation, and that can be hard from a sort of staffing resource point of view. And the TOPS Lab is really excited about this whole grant and this project, so we would be partnering with them on evaluation. And we put in money just on kind of that data analytics front. You hear a lot about Streetlight, but there's a lot of other things going on out there. So we wanted to make sure if there were some things that we found in working with the TOPS Lab that we didn't have, that we might want to kind of check out or try out, that we would have some funds to do that. We also have some kind of new outreach and engagement things, including something that we saw in some other cities, like Los Angeles has a really interesting Vision Zero artist in residence, but they're really kind of targeting people that we don't normally hear from, that maybe aren't paying attention to our message, but are a core demographic that we want to reach. So we put that in, as well as some support around traffic safety culture, working with our stakeholder task force, with groups that would like to partner with us on this. And then we have a couple that are kind of vehicle miles traveled, because we know that if you get people to drive less, European cities have certainly shown the positive outcomes there. So part of it is taking our pilot cargo bike program for the city and making that a permanent part of our city fleet, as well as at one point we had done some outreach around a community-based cargo bike library and bringing that project forward as well, so that it's not just something, it's something that anyone could participate in, and trying and seeing how that would work. We also have some youth education. This has come up a lot in Vision Zero, is the lack of a lot of it is around driver education, because it's privatized, and how a lot of people just wait until they're 18 and never do driver's education. So we had this idea of doing mobility education around walking, biking, transit, and making sure that people do have some level of driver education before they turn 18 and maybe just go and get their license without having to go through a formal program. So working with our high schools. And then impaired driving, we recently have been able to bring public health into that issue. They've been able to kind of move some of their staff back to that kind of work. So we've been working a lot. They're launching their place of last drink, but they have some other things they'd like to work on. Having funding to do a Madison Safe Ride program, since not everyone is participating in the Tavern League program for a variety of reasons. And Dane County lags way behind in that Safe Ride program because of that. So I think there's an opportunity there. And they wanted to partner with us on that, as well as partnering with us. We do see underage drinking, like impaired driving, is something that is also, unfortunately, with drivers under 21. And you can buy alcohol online and just go pick it up. And so we want to ensure that people are not driving somewhere and picking up alcohol, particularly when they're underage. And so we said we would partner with them on that. They are very interested in working on policy and system change around impaired driving. And MPD, there's some training that would be really helpful that they highlighted that would help them with impaired driving if their officers just had some courses. And then we here in Wisconsin have one of the leading ped bike safety law enforcement classes. But unfortunately, the person who developed it and has been the trainer is semi-retired. And I think he's looking to be fully retired. So we would like to have some of our officers not only be trained, because it's been quite a while since we've done it, but be able to train themselves so that when our normal person is fully retired, the class is still able to be offered. And then just some lasers to ensure when we're out doing hazardous speed violations that we have the right tools that make the job easier. And then you can kind of see here we have the split, as well as, once again, our subtotal for DOT underserved communities. That's very focused on the ones that they have, the census tracts that they have selected as underserved. That number would be bigger if you consider some of our neighborhood resource team areas. Right. So that was a pretty quick, but hopefully you can take a look at it. We also have some maps, and as Yang said, lots of links to click on things and get more information. It's a pretty big document.
It's a lot, which is awesome. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, Renee, I am just curious about the asphalt art. I just can't picture, I think, in my head exactly what that might mean. Can you give a little bit of maybe a verbal illustration of what that might entail?
Sure. Cool. So it definitely has been used kind of in safety in some different ways, including, curb bump outs that also have some artistic, like they're not permanent concrete ones. I'm not necessarily saying the crosswalk style, but it could be outside of a crosswalk, some art, but not just on kind of the local streets that our ordinance currently allows. So it has been used in a variety of ways, probably kind of in bump out situations is the most typical. But it's definitely pushing us beyond our own kind of local street ordinance, which is a very limited situation.
Aiden, do we have registrants? Is that what your hand is up for?
We do, yeah. We have a
Okay.
registering.
Yes, Alder Miadzi and Darren, if you could hang on to your comments, why don't we go ahead and hear from the registrants, and then we'll come back to you. Who do we have, Aiden?
So it's Joe Frost again of Whitehall Drive, Madison, Wisconsin. Neither supports nor opposes and would like to speak.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
I had more of a question on the presentation with the thought. So as an individual with a physical disability that uses a wheelchair, and as, like I brought this up with the Disability Rights Commission on which I serve, I was just curious about the accessibility features of the crosswalks. Like notably, I'm unable to push the push buttons around most city curb cuts and such, and many of them are off in the grass. So I'm just curious if this plan would have options or features, toward that end. I've even found that on campus, especially the automated ones that just switch after a certain amount of time and announce, that the light is on to cross and all that, have been wonderful for me and for many others. So yeah, just wanted to see if there's any notes on that. Thank you.
Renee?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely more of those accessible pedestrian signals that he mentioned that have the verbal, like you can hear them. Definitely there's some funds in here, and with all of the improvements, we would be looking to improve accessibility, curb cuts, placement of any poles, buttons, things like that. That would all definitely be a part of our project. And if we are lucky enough to be awarded all or at least some of this, we would definitely be interested in working with the Disability Rights Commission on finding some projects and ensuring that we're really understanding the needs for everyone in our community. So that would definitely be a part of the engagement we would be interested in doing.
Great.
Yeah, I want to, quickly add that this is a goal for all other work as well outside of this grant. Make sure our infrastructure, built from now are accessible to everyone, especially, placement of push buttons, or maybe even better without them, bringing things automatically on, with accessible pattern signals. So yeah, definitely, I think, there has been many years history to correct. But hopefully we'll be steadily making progress on improving that.
Okay, thank you. Is that all that you had, Joe?
Yep, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Did we have any other registrants, Aiden?
We do not, no.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll go back to Alder Miadzi and then Darren.
Actually, my question was already answered, but actually, I just want to take time too also to thank Renee and also Tal for all the work that they've put into this. It was a very articulate. I mean, there was so much great information in this. I mean, talking about even driver's ed for school, bringing that back. I mean, that's one of the barriers that I see as far as for our teenagers. Just so much information was in there, and also just even all the people that you guys outreached. That is huge. And we talk about equity, and we talk about outreach in our community. So I just really commend you guys, and no wonder you guys are winning all kinds of awards. If you guys want to take me on a trip, I'll go in a suitcase or something. So let me know.
Thank you, Alder. Darren, go ahead.
I didn't have a question, just more comments in support of, the great work and the great application that the city put together, and just share experience that my employer, AARP Wisconsin, had hosted a I guess, almost internationally renowned walkability expert in Madison last week for multiple engagements. So I got to hear from his perspective of where things were. First, sung the praises of city staff, and he was very interested to hear that we had such engaged city staff and engineering department on pedestrian safety. So that was there. He walked a total of almost 50 miles over the course of 3 days, all over Madison. So he got a lot. But then in support of that, the student education, we had an opportunity to do what he calls the pedestrian dignity experience with Madison West High School seniors on Monday during their lunchtime, just around the school, and just quickly talked about the challenges and the struggles that people have who can't drive or choose to walk, and what things they have. And just even in that short time, the kids were pointing stuff out and even found the construction, the challenge with the Jersey barriers they have, that they'll lead people down, but there's no way for them to get back up on the sidewalk, and they got to turn around and try to cross. And so, kids said, I'm going to go in and tell our principal right away. So just even a short amount of time, it makes a difference. And catching up with the kids at homecoming, some of them came during pictures and told me that they saw other things in their neighborhood. So it makes an impact just in a short amount of time in doing that. So
great
kudos for including that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Other comments or questions? It's quite an impressive application. And, everybody's got all of our fingers and toes and everything crossed, and hopeful that we get the whole 20 million. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, along those lines, and sorry if I missed that. When will we find out? Do we know yet?
Yeah, so they have multiple steps for evaluation. So yeah, I think it's first that there's a team evaluate that. They will give you ratings based on different categories. I think there are 4 different categories, like highly recommended, and I didn't remember the not good one ratings. So hopefully we don't get those ratings. And the highly rated ones, I think it goes to the management, and eventually will reach the desk of the U.S. Duty Secretary. So that'll take some time, but they're looking at making the decisions in January 2023. So hopefully we can hear some news by then.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Alden Miadzi, go ahead.
Just piggybacking on what I asked at the last meeting, just about trying to get bike trails that are on the north side in order to know where they lead to, in order to connect. I have a lot of bikers on the north side, so just wanted to see if I can get a map of that, because people are talking about they don't connect as easily to other trails. So I'm just trying to see what I can do for bikers that live in this district. So if you can provide that to me.
Yeah, I can definitely get you a map. And then if you have some specific comments, we can chat about them as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we can also show you, what's planned in the future.
Okay, great. Other comments or questions? Again, very well done application, very comprehensive, and I would highly recommend it myself. So hopefully everybody else feels that same way. So really, really great job, everybody. And we'll be on pins and needles, and hopefully you'll let us know as soon as you hear. That'll be great news. Is it an all or nothing, or can you get part of a grant application, or is it you get the whole 20 million that you ask for, or you don't get anything? How does that work?
Actually, it's nice because it isn't all or nothing. We obviously would like everything, but they have said for cases where it would be possible to do partial funding, they would consider that versus an all or nothing. So I think that's really good news for us as well. And I think is the benefit of not just going all in on one thing where it is all or nothing. So I'm hopeful that we'll get selected for as a big chunk.
Good. Great. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Maybe I want to say that it's a brand new program, and so no one had experience with that before, so it's kind of hard to tell, right? I think this really depends on what U.S. DOT is looking for, right? If you're looking for some city that has a huge safety problem, Madison actually is generally we're doing a lot better than most other cities in terms of safety, in terms of the death rate, for example, for traffic. We are like a half to 1/3 of many cities out there. So if they are looking for who are most in need, there may be other cities that could be more competitive. But if they are looking for someone can do it right, and can be inspiring maybe inspiration for others, example for others, I think we are very strong candidate, and we do have concrete needs. We do have another needs that we want to get rid of all the traffic deaths and serious injuries. So hopefully, we will have some good news, and once we hear any news, we'll keep the commission updated.
Great. Well, thank you for providing us with this additional information. And you talked about transparency, and this is, fully transparent so that we know where we are and the status. And very much appreciate it. And a lot of excellent work went into this. And again, we'll look forward to hearing positive results. So thank you so much. Any other last comments before we move on? Okay. Thank you again, both Yang and Renee, for the update. Next, we have the test on removal of the outer loop peak hour traffic lane and parking restriction.
Yep.
Welcome, Tom. Haven't seen you in a while.
All right. Yeah. Good to be back. Nice to see everyone. Tom Moore from Traffic Engineering. So what this item is information about a test we plan to implement to remove the existing peak hour lane or existing peak hour parking restrictions on the outer loop. So I'll just give you some background information. So the outer loop we call, which is Webster, Dayton, Fairchild, and Doty Street. Just this one section of Doty and one block of Webster has an afternoon peak hour parking restriction. So from 4 to 5:30 p.m. each weekday, any cars that are parked there are towed, and it becomes a third lane. So I'll show just from street view what that looks like. So this is like during the middle of the day or weekends. There's 2 through lanes and then a bike lane that's not really well marked, and then a parking lane. And then during the weekday PM peak from 4 to 5:30 p.m., these parking is removed. This becomes a third travel lane, and then the bike lane is right up against the curb. So this all came about a few months ago. The mayor actually, this is actually an idea from the mayor. She saw some vehicles being towed, and every day see vehicles being towed, and wondered if that was really necessary. So she asked us to look into it, and we did. And we collected some data, looked at the video, and what we found was that traffic volumes are pretty similar to what they were pre-pandemic. And this has kind of always been an issue that we just didn't really look into in detail, but just kind of noticed anecdotally that this third lane, which is the peak hour lane, does not have high utilization. It takes a lot of traffic for people to get out of this middle lane and use the third lane. And there's probably several reasons for that. I think one is that people are afraid that there will be a parked car and they'll have to merge back into that middle lane. So this is a pretty common situation where the middle lane is just completely full and really no one's using the third lane. And to a lesser extent, they're using the left lane. But here are the numbers. This is the peak hour numbers from earlier this summer. I think this was a Concerts on the Square night, which is typically some of the highest volumes we see. And only 3% of the vehicles use this third lane as a through lane from Doty onto Webster. So what it's mostly used for is a right turn lane. So the poor peak hour lane utilization. And actually, so that was from earlier this summer. I just took a screenshot from tonight during the meeting, and this is what it looked like just a couple hours ago. And I compare that to streets that have a peak hour lane restriction that have good utilization, like Johnson Street. So this is Johnson Street in the afternoon. Typically during the day, cars are parked in this third lane, but in the afternoon, it's highly used as a peak hour lane. And this is from this afternoon as well on Johnson Street. The third lane is completely utilized. So beyond the poor lane utilization, one of the other aspects is the on-street parking in the area. So during COVID, with the streeteries permanently removed quite a few on-street parking spaces in the King Street, East Main, Pinckney area in this corner. And the color of the dot, so a darker color means it's more used, and lighter means lesser. So the idea is to open up a little bit more on-street parking in the area. And this just kind of shows that over a map. So we've got 31 parking meter stalls that are out due to the streeteries. And we have 34 that we would bring back online during the afternoon peak hour. So there's a little bit of savings for parking utility for the revenue for those meters. One thing we do plan to do is keep the restriction on the block of East Doty between Pinckney and King, because that is pretty highly used as a right turn lane, and we think that will that does help quite a bit with congestion. So we brought this to the different city departments. There weren't really any issues with it. With the Metro network redesign, there will be regular bus routes on Doty Street, but we think it's workable with the parking. Metro is generally okay with it. So it's really, I just kind of highlighted the days where the inner square streets are closed during the afternoon. And that's really just Concerts on the Square and then the one Friday for Art Fair. So those are really the days that I think we'll likely see some congestion. But again, with the poor lane utilization, it takes a lot for people to use. They kind of have to be forced over into that lane to use it, to make it worth it. So that's kind of an overview of what we plan to do right now for this test. We plan to just change the signs. We do want to beef up the markings for the existing bike lane, but the plan would be to bring that back as a more fully in detail design, and then assuming this all goes well, install the new markings next spring, summer. So that's it. If you have any questions or comments, I'll take those.
And do we have anybody registered for this?
Nope, we do not.
Okay, Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I guess maybe two main things. You mentioned Metro, are they usually using that third lane? And if so, I mean, would it make sense to just have it as a bus lane? Because I mean, one bus every 7 minutes, I mean, it's relatively heavy traffic. And I guess that would be one potential negative outcome if Metro gets slowed down here.
Yeah, so right now there are no bus routes that use Doty Street or Webster regularly. They only use it when they're detoured, which actually is every Saturday for Farmers Market, and then for the other events, for Concerts on the Square, any event that detours them off Capitol Loop or the Inner Square. So they are, when they're detoured now, like on weekends for Farmers Market, they're just in regular traffic. So I guess we just don't see the congestion to use that right now. Maybe it would be in the future, but the feedback we had was that this would be workable, and by making this permanent, by making these parking meters permanent, that would give the opportunity to have like bump outs, possibly with the buses stopping in traffic. And I should mention that this block of East Doty between Pinckney, actually this entire quadrant will be reconstructed in 2024. So that opens up some curb change opportunities. But we can keep that in mind when we do this test to watch for how buses operate.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's a good point. The buses are not there yet, and therefore you can't really test anything just yet. But yeah, so maybe keeping that in mind for the future, where like, yeah, I mean, if we can speed up, I mean, downtown is a place where buses might potentially be slowed down, and if you have might be gains there. But yeah, otherwise, I think the potential for the improvements, I mean, both in terms of bump out, or maybe also reconsidering how the bike lane is configured. Like, you know, does it make sense to have a parking protected bike lane where you switch the parking in or not as part of a reconstruction? I think, yeah, that seems like a good thing to potentially consider. And then
can I interrupt you, Harold? Justin, did you have a comment with regard to the buses?
I just wanted to echo, and thanks, Tom. I think we did discuss this, and I think that the loss of being able to use the lane is kind of offset by the fact that we could do bump outs if the permanent parking is permanent, and I think that would roughly be equivalent on our perspective. The one section where we did think that the parking restriction was helpful is that last block before King Street, because we'll be making that right turn. And it does appear that parking restriction would remain. So we did, Metro did review this and are comfortable with this approach.
Great. And I thought I had one more thing, but I can't remember what it was. It's getting late, so never mind.
No, you can put your hand up again if it comes back to you, okay?
Sure.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I guess for the sake of giving feedback, I'll just say that I kind of agree with everything that was just said. It seems to me like if you were to, I was thinking about the bus lane too, and if you were to convert it, it would only be for the peak period. So the benefits of being able to harden the bike lane and do bump outs and stuff, I think, exceeds what you could get from a bus lane there. So that's all. Yeah, agreed.
Alderman Yazzie, go ahead.
Chris always steals my line. But yeah, I definitely agree. As an alder that goes downtown all the time, I'm shocked that that lane, left lane, is not utilized more. I almost want to see if you guys could put a sign up saying "Get in the fast lane here." As that lane, I always go around using that. Because nobody uses that. Everybody's to the right for some odd reason, and most people sound like people are there for the first time. So, but yeah, I agree.
Harold, go ahead.
It came back. I remembered. What are the metrics that you're going to use to evaluate whether the test works?
We'll be able to review the video to look at congestion, but we'll probably do some more counts. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're keeping a pretty close eye on it since we're up here every day anyway. So
ask the mayor what she sees, right?
Yeah, she can look out her window. Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, so basically congestion, traffic volumes, and I guess you can look at meter revenue as well. But yeah, okay. Yeah.
Other comments or questions? When are you going to start the test and how long will it last, Tom?
So we plan on starting the sign changes tomorrow. I'll get on it right away. And then tests are, I think it's written in ordinance that tests are typically 90 days, and then they can be extended for an additional 90 days. So that would put us to somewhere April-ish when we can at least have a plan for either making it permanent or going back.
Okay.
So basically over winter. Yeah.
Okay. And then you'll come back to us with the plan?
Yep.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Thanks for the update. It was a quick response to what seems like an issue that should be addressed.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you, Tom. Next, we have updates from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. There was a meeting on Monday of this week. Chris or Alder Harrington McKinney, do you have comments?
Sure. It was a pretty brief meeting. There were two neighborhood plans, one for Hawthorne Truax, which is the area around East Wash and Stoughton Road. So some transportation implications there. The other was Shady Wood, which is the western edge of town. And then we talked about our TPB schedule for the next year. And one takeaway from that conversation was that we're kind of hoping, based on conversations with Tom Lynch, that we might have a lighter load in the coming year than we did this past year, because we've done a lot. And so that would probably have implications for us here too.
Okay. Comments or questions or anything from you, Alder Harrington McKinney?
That's about it, because it was a brief meeting. And when they got into the discussion about the meetings, as a new member to the board, I listened more than contributed because I didn't have a background, but Chris kind of nailed it.
Okay. Comments or questions from people? Okay, seeing none. Announcements, I don't have any, unless anybody has any announcements that they would like. No? Okay, then looking at future agenda items, you can see for the next meeting, our schedule is something that we'll talk about, and I figured that before we talk about the schedule, or in conjunction with that, we should talk about our meeting format for the next year, because I think it's good to revisit that once a year, which we did last year, and we've had some conversations about that. And you can see the other items on there. One thing that was discussed, that we should have a conversation with the folks from Department of Civil Rights about helpful practices for inclusive meetings before we have the public hearing. So we're going to have that on the agenda as well. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see future meetings. We've got Safe Streets Madison, which Yang mentioned. We may want to look at some changes there, potential updates at some point, and formally have it on here to track that we do want to get together with representatives from the Disability Rights Commission, as well as the NAACP Dane County, when we can arrange it, to talk about racial equity and social justice as it relates to transportation. So that's an ongoing effort that we have with regard to racial equity and social justice. And those are two proxy groups that we can meet with that can certainly help us in that regard. So is there anything that's not on either our work plan? I mean, we have some things coming up like our annual crash report, reminder about statement of interest, new speed limit stop, and yield signing, which is in this quarter. But anything that's not on our work plan or on this listing of potential agenda items that anybody would like to add to the list? I try and keep track of all of everybody's suggestions, and Aiden helps me with that. So anything that you do have, feel free to email one of us and we'll certainly add it to the list. So I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, and if we could get a motion to adjourn. Alden Miadzi. We have a second. Bridget. Okay, well, we have Robbie and Bridget. That was a tie. So we have a second and a third, a tie for a second there. I'm assuming that there's nobody's going to object to a unanimous consent vote to adjourn. And thanks, everybody. Another great meeting, and appreciate everybody's input on planning for the public hearing. That's really been a huge effort, and everybody's involvement and great ideas has helped make that. That's going to make it an even better public hearing. And also the traffic safety, we spent a lot of time on that tonight too, and it's great to see the fruits of that as well. So thanks everybody for all your involvement and all your help.